The morning, however, is still young because we will be starting our first panel discussion of the week on the topic of the future of geospatial. Hosting this panel is the Director of Geospatial and Data Division and the Chief Data Officer for Singapore Land Authority, Mr. Siau Yong. Over to you, Mr. Ng.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Very happy to see so many of you here today. And it's quite a different kind of environment that we are in now. Despite that, I think we have a common aim. Wherever we are still learning from each other, sharing our knowledge online, like this one that we have here. The concept and use of geospatial has been around since time immemorial. The ancient map of places used by explorers like Columbus and navigators are in fact geospatial. So there's a lot of information in these maps. What is essential in all this information is location. Now, geospatial got a big boost in the last 50 years or so when quantitative and computational geography emerged with the widespread use of computers. So as we move into an era of ubiquitous digital connectivity, smart cities, smart nation, what role will geospatial play? How significant will geospatial become in the business world and in our day-to-day life? How will the geospatial industry ecosystem evolve? And what are the opportunities and challenges we want to ask and discuss today? In a nutshell, what lies in the future of geospatial? Today, we are honored to have three distinguished speakers on the panel to kick off the Singapore Geospatial Week Plus 2020. Together, these three speakers bring a vast amount of experience from the industry, academia, government, and international organizations. So we hope to bring home some gems from the views and thoughts today. So please allow me to give a very quick introduction of our panel today. Well, in the interest of time, their bios will be shown on the screen, but please allow me to refrain from reciting the entire bio sketch. First is, let us welcome Dr. Nadine Alameh, CEO of the Open Geospatial Consortium. She is a very respected, well-respected professional leader in the geospatial industry, currently based in Washington, D.C., United States. And we must thank her for staying up late at this hour to participate in this panel discussion. Next, we have Professor Hasanuddin Abidin at the Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia. Professor Hassan is a renowned academic in the geospatial world. He's also a very good friend with Singapore, frequently supporting our geospatial effort that we drive and promote. He has just returned to the academic after a stint at the Geospatial Information Agency of Indonesia, BIG, as the chairman. And finally, we have Mr. Leslie Wong, Managing Director of ESRI South Asia. He is a very active geospatial business leader in South Asia. He doesn't need much introduction. He is a very keen promoter in the geospatial use in various aspects, and also a very keen volunteer to help those who need. All right, so without further ado, Let me invite each of the panelists to share their perspective on the topic. And after that, I will have some questions for the panelists, and hopefully we can engender a good discussion. That is before we open the question to the audience. And I would like to remind all the audience, you are welcome, most welcome, to direct questions to all the panelists or any of the panelists by using the Q&A function or button at the bottom of the screen. Please try not to use the chat room, as will be the organizer and myself will be focusing on the Q&A box. So please, as you listen to them, you are also welcome to post questions, but we'll address those questions after the presentation and the panel discussion. All right, so first off, may I invite Dr. Nadine Alameh to share with us her thoughts on the topic. Nadine, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen. Sharing. So first of all, it's my pleasure to be up at like 11 p.m. right now in Washington, D.C., because this is a very, very special event. We have been all doing virtual events over the last 6 months, but I haven't seen anything in this magnitude of registrations and webinars. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel, to be on this launch. And thank you to Mr. Ong and Mr. Takyam for the introduction, which we will build on. So I'm here to talk about the future of geospatial. So let's see. I'll share some thoughts with you, and hopefully that will generate some, ideas. I'm not sure how many on the line of the hundreds from all over the world, right, who are here with us today are familiar with the Open Geospatial Consortium. Maybe you have heard of us as the authority for the standards for geospatial information. So if you've used, you've exchanged files or models, or you've used web services for geospatial, you've probably used us. If you've used, any geospatial software, you've probably used our standards. If you've used your phones for maps, you've probably used our standards. But more importantly, you cannot develop standards, and honestly, you cannot do geospatial without people and without communities. And I think that's a very special thing about geospatial. So I regard OGC as the trusted and neutral forum for communities to come together and see how they can share information and how they can overcome challenges, sometimes across communities. And last but not least, we've heard it already. It's a world where you have technology moving at such a fast pace. Internet of Things and small satellites and connected vehicles, but you also have this world that we're facing increasingly challenging, complex problems. Climate change, COVID, the reason why we're all here virtually. These are complex issues, and we're not going to be able to solve them without thought leadership and innovation in a collaborative way. And I think that's what OGC is. I have been the CEO of OGC for about 1.5 years now. And I came back to OGC. I used to run the innovation program at OGC about 10 years ago, and left and started a small business in air traffic management and drones. And I did the large business at Northrop Grumman. And I came back to OGC because the future of geospatial is actually now. This is our moment. And so I'm very happy to share with you some ideas here. The best part, again, about OGC as a consortium. So we are a consortium, not-for-profit, global, of industry, academia, and government. I go back to the partnership that Mr. Takyam, stressed in his opening remarks. So this is the place where these partnerships can form and can evolve. And this is my favorite part of our consortium. So we're global because our problems are the same. They unite us. We also heard the opening speeches about being united by this crisis, and we're all dedicated to making location or geospatial information fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And I hope you recognize some of the businesses and entities on the right-hand side, a sample of OGC strategic principal and technical members. It's a sample of the mix, the melting pot, because this is how partnerships happen, and this is how you solve complex problems. And this is where geospatial comes into everything. I hope you get the chance to also check out the other, the list of members, because I'm personally inspired by the startups that are popping up in geospatial and the research and academia that's spawning out of this amazing time we live in with respect to geospatial. So why is it amazing? I think nowadays there's this realization that the future is data integration. That's the power. How do we integrate health data with smart cities data, with the socioeconomic data, with energy data? It's data integration. It's at the heart of decision-making, of analysis, and of prediction. And finally, and I say finally for those of us who've been in this field for some time now, geospatial is being finally recognized. This is, I say, it's our moment. It's here. The future is here. We're being recognized as the glue and as this enabling concept that brings all this data together to actually makes more sense. And COVID is a great example. We have leaders all over the world actually now recognizing the value of where, actually recognizing that like pandemics and response are or have a clear geographic dimensions, but we're also recognizing that we're not there, even though we have the ideas and we have the industry and we have the technology. The information exchange is still a bottleneck. The timeliness, the harmonization, we're still not there, and we're still a long way to go. So that to me is the future. Within OGC, this takes a long time to go over, but we're trying to, like everybody, trying to get ahead, to stay ahead. So how do we stay ahead and not catch the trends? We have this exercise called OGC Tech Trends, so you can read about it later. But the idea is we're trying to see what everything that geospatial touches, and then everything that touches geospatial. So it's a two-way street. Identify the clusters and then take action. That's why we're here. We want to take action. So I think you won't be surprised at what you see here, and it's a lot. That's why you have to do it on your own. But 3D modeling, indoor modeling, machine learning, your self-driving cars, the drones, the small sats, the simulation, the virtual reality, augmented reality. I mean, you name it, you can mix and match the smart cities, Internet of Things. Everything is actually, you see this world expanding because geospatial is now everywhere. So if you group these things, we've come up with these clusters. Again, I don't think there are, particularly any surprises here. You'll see how actually one of the trends is responding to pandemics and anticipating pandemics at all levels, connected area vehicles, The edge computing, right? So now again, your devices on the edge, including the small sats, they can do some computing and some AI. So you can spread the processing and get processing essentially at the edge. Digital twins and the smart cities movement, new space, new satellites, new phenomenologies, new analysis, geospatial data science, integrating geospatial into everything. Again, there's no shortage. I mentioned augmented reality, and you also see things maybe are surprising as tech trends, which are, for example, geoethics. So the idea here is, how do you drill down? Again, you can take any of these. I picked here urban digital twins because they're very relevant, and you start to see geospatial and everything. That is the future, geospatial and everything. 3D, indoor, underground, LiDAR, machine learning, drones, edge computing, the 5G networks, sensor web, and on and on. I can go on. So I will leave you with, I really think the future, one, it's now, and it's about data integration. And I think we are here very privileged to be able to play a role in humanity's data future, because we're in the middle of every, not pandemics, of every disaster recovery. We are in the middle now of, retail and real estate, and we're in the middle of every domain, agriculture and maritime and earth observation and transportation. But with all this data, everything now we can relate to geospatial and location. There's never, ever been more of a need for interoperability. How do I connect? That's the future, and that's the challenge. And it's not just about technology. It's not just about innovation. It's also about the partnerships and the collaboration and helping each other, bridging the divide, which in a way this virtual setting is helping us do. It's bridging the divide across countries and organizations, and it helps the geospatial community really make the impact that it can make. So I hope these words are enough to get people thinking, and thank you again for inviting me. I'm very honored to be on this panel, and I look forward to hearing what my fellow panelists have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you for your short commentary on the future of geospatial. What I pick up from your sharing is really about the data integration and emerging a variety of technologies that would sort of leverage on geospatial to bring a lot of benefits for humankind. I do have some questions for you later revolving about your point on data integration and also the data interoperability that we'll see. But for now, we'll keep this question. Let's hear from our next speaker, Professor Dr. Hasanuddin from Indonesia. Professor Hasan, please.
Thank you, Siau. Let me share my screen first. Thank you. I think what I will do is just share with you what is the geospatial future in Indonesia, because this is the topic that I mostly aware of. So the geospatial future in Indonesia, I think is very good, very bright. First of all, because there is political will and awareness, since the data is our nation new kind of wealth, yeah, including, of course, geospatial data and information. And the good thing is when President mentioned this thing, and then right away he issued the presidential decree. So as Nadine has mentioned that about data integration. So the president would like all government data from state finance data, demographic data, statistical data, and of course, geospatial data and other data, including big data, should be integrated and then should be utilized, yeah, for various development planning and budgeting and realization of SDGs and other urgent needs like COVID and so on and so forth. So this is the good momentum, I think, for Indonesia since the president itself integration. The next future is because of the vast territory of Indonesia itself. Yeah, we have a very huge archipelagic country with a lot of abundant land and marine resources, and we should use geospatial data and information. No other ways. Yeah, we cannot handle this vast territory without map, location, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of things that can be done when we use geospatial data and information. This is actually a kind of a concept that has been proposed by our Ministry of National Planning, that geospatial information, as Nadine has mentioned also in the beginning, is like a glue, yeah, like integrators and coordinators, because we have SDGs indicators, we have national development indicators, and we have the needs of stakeholders, yeah, from the central and local government, people, business, private, NGO, and we have to use all available technology and data and information of geospatial. And in case of Indonesia, the enablers and drivers ranging from our large-scale base map, and then one map policy, one data Indonesia, and the other things that I believe all the participants are aware of. The other geospatial future in Indonesia is smart cities, actually. Indonesia have many cities, actually. Big cities, especially, is the capital of the provinces. And Indonesian government has launched 100 smart cities in Indonesia, yeah? And I believe geospatial data information is really necessary to realize this program. And I believe you are aware also there are several enablers and drivers that can be used for this kind of program, yeah. And this is a kind of study. So smart cities potential in Indonesia is a huge money, yeah. And based on our National Statistical Agency, about 67% Indonesian people will live in, of course, geospatial data information in various forms. The other future is location-based services. Yeah, I believe you. This is the several players in Indonesia. There is Grab, there is GoCar, Tokopedia, Shopee, Lazada, and everything. And this is the study from Hootsuite in January 2020. You see that the e-commerce spending in Indonesia is several billion US dollars. Yeah? You can see from fashion and beauty, electronics, foods, and everything. And I think during this pandemic COVID time is also increasing, yeah, because people are used to shop by e-commerce. And we have 270 millions, and most of them are millennial, yeah, and they are very keen about using this gadget, yeah. And the enablers also there nowadays. So I think this is a big future in Indonesia, yeah. This is the last slide. I think Indonesia is also a country prone to many natural hazards. Yeah, so government also put a lot of efforts to reduce this disaster effects, and geospatial data and information has been used. Since we always facing natural hazards, I think geospatial future and Indonesia shouldn't leave this latent problem, yeah, in Indonesia. And the enablers and drivers also is many, yeah. I think that's Siau Yong, what I would like to share with you as the introductory presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Hassan. Well, I really like what your president said. They say data is actually a new form of wealth and in fact more valuable than oil. I venture to add that somehow oil is sort of at least theoretically, a finite resource. One day it may, in a way, just get depleted. But data, I think on the other hand, is really an infinite resource. It can be used over again and again and again. I think the issue is really how do we then really extract the value of the data, the immense value of the data, and how do we then, in a sense, use geospatial, like what you say, you know, as an integrator to bring data and other kind of technologies and glue things together. Again, we shall keep this question in mind, and then perhaps we can engender some discussion among the audience later. For now, I think we shall hear from our final speaker, Mr. Leslie Wong from the ESRI South Asia. Leslie, please.
Thank you, Siau Yong. And give me a moment to begin sharing my screen. Thank you once again, Siau Yong. It is my honor to be invited to this panel. Thank you, Simon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow GIS professionals. So to kickstart, there are just three things I'd like to briefly mention. There's a lot that I agree with Dr. Nadine and Professor Hassan. So let me just share three thoughts quickly. So first off, one area of change I think that will happen is in the time ahead, geospatial methods and technology will emerge in more ways in many jobs. I think today's disciplines such as computer science, engineering, architecture, and marketing and business will still apply. But geospatial analysis and decision-making will be incorporated in multiple ways because of urbanization, smart city development and evolution. And even if you think that there's going to be some degree of reverse urbanization, you know, the three-tier cities need to be rejuvenated. So geospatial understanding can be a real game changer for all kinds of decisions in many jobs. Helps us frame situations from a more strategic perspective so that we can ask better questions and take better action. And this kind of geospatial framing also helps us to incorporate new information into decisions, helping us to see things holistically when we overlay new data over previous. It will also have an upgrade effect on jobs. It is, yes, there'll be new jobs, but I think there's a big part of it will also be about jobs made new. GIS is one of the types of assistive technologies. You know, it's not something that replaces a human in a zero-sum game, and that's one of my personal reasons for still being excited about GIS after all these years. And teachers like Professor Hassan, who are passionate about new generations of spatial thinkers, are also contributing to this future. Next, I'd like to talk about something that I think will still persist well into the future. Spatial visualization, I think, will still be a crucial step for better insight and action. So here, let me share a story about Dublin Airport, a quick story. Birds fly onto runways every day, and it can cause disruptions to planes and safety. You know, airport crew, ground crew work different shifts, so each person spots birds on runways throughout their own shifts at random times and locations. And it would seem to them like birds would come in all directions and land anywhere and everywhere. But then when the GIS team at the airport worked with the ground crew to record the approximate locations each time there was a bird incursion, and they collated this data over a period of time, they discovered 2 primary hot zones where birds seem to favor. And with that, they could take more targeted action, save the birds and save the planes. Something very simple, but very concrete. So Dublin Airport used GIS for all manner of work at the airport, from planning to maintenance and repairs across different teams. And when safety and efficiency are improved because of that, passengers and airport visitors all benefit. We've heard a lot about Industry 4.0 and the big IoT data it brings, and it can be a potent resource. It's real-time, it's high volume and diverse. It comes in 2D and 3D. It comes in macro levels and indoors, and it is fast changing, and it's all great. But we need to put it together properly to find patterns and insight. To take action, we need to know where to take action, we need to see the problem for what it is. And problems should not be underestimated. And neither should problems be exaggerated. Both extremes are not useful. So, where we can set up a prototype lab or a living laboratory and start to build our own digital simulation. Now, it doesn't have to be a 100% photorealistic digital twin, but a digital cousin or a good enough map has often helped humans make informed and timely decisions, like the Dublin Airport Group. The Esri Singapore User Conference is scheduled to start tomorrow as part of Geospatial Week, and I thank SLA for all these years of collaboration so that we can make our schedules coincide and really make this week a success. And tomorrow, if you're an attendee, you will have the chance to see the work of many other GIS users showcasing their geospatial analysis and the maps and the work that they support. So the third area I'd like to share with you is I believe that creative geospatial design and environmental improvements will help to improve health and quality of life. There are studies that show a strong correlation between environmental factors and life expectancy. One description I heard recently was that environmental factors make up 60% of the factors that influence life expectancy. The remaining can be attributed to healthcare at 30% and DNA at 10%. The built environment, the natural environment, and activities enabled by good design will have a great impact on people's health and quality of life. Recently, Esri Singapore signed an MOU in the collaboration with the National University of Singapore School of Design and Environment with aim to support these types of studies. We were given a tour of a building called SDE4, which is the world's first net zero energy building on a university campus. And there we saw some designs in action: better heat dissipation, better air circulation inside and through the building, and a clever combination of programmable cooling appliances were some of the techniques used. Extending from these ideas, they will also apply these innovations to rejuvenated buildings, as well as plan new buildings and integrate them better with the surrounding landscape. At a macro level, geodesign can also benefit in many other ways. Delivery of health services in neighborhoods, construction planning and public safety, flood damage protection for disaster-prone countries like Bangladesh, pollution control and risk assessment in public health, and many other kinds of preventative as well as enforcement action. And there are many possibilities that lay ahead, but it won't be done automatically. It takes will and it takes action. And in a way, it's related, this third point is related to the first point that I shared about jobs being made new. So with that, let me wrap by recapping the three things that I mentioned. Jobs will be made new. Spatial visualization will launch us towards better insight and action. And creative geodesign of our environments will improve health and quality of life. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to having this discussion with the esteemed panel. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much, Leslie. I think that the point I get from your sharing is really about the continuous improvement and use and innovation in the arena of geospatial. They will address many of the concerns that we face in this world, especially on the environmental aspects. So thanks for sharing. May I ask the organizer to put the three other panelists' camera on? And what we're going to do now is for the next 10 to 15 minutes, we will discuss some of the key questions. In fact, I thought of after listening to your sharing. As your sharing were, due to time constraint, were short, and perhaps you can also take this opportunity to sort of elaborate on your points. I have the very first question, but it's a sort of a larger perspective question. They are not really focused on the areas that you are currently serving, be it in the international organization or academic or a business organization. The question is that going ahead into the next 10 to 20 years, the future, what do you think will be the single most significant factor that will drive the future of geospatial? So that's one. And in a similar vein, what could be the showstopper that will slow the progress of the development of geospatial? Well, I hope that we can spark off some discussion among the panelists. Not necessarily we must agree with each other. So there are points of contention. That's what I like to see, some sparks, during this discussion. So any one of you would like to take up my question? Nadine, yeah, go ahead.
I'll start. I like the, although it's very hard to, contradict such amazing panelists. I enjoyed hearing their perspectives. So I love that question. And I'll be very quick. I think this is from the interoperability perspective and the technology. The most significant factor that will drive the future of geospatial will be how easily that data can be integrated with other data. So far, we've done geospatial as we're a bubble. We're the GIS people. They are GIS systems. And I think the factor that will accelerate is, having location just integrated so easily. And this is up to us to actually make that happen. And the showstopper, I think, could be, right? Privacy concerns, because as we go, we mentioned, location is becoming more critical and people want to protect their privacies. We may be hiding against the privacy so that we don't share data. So maybe this is one of the factors that will slow the progress. So I think interoperability, yay, privacy, let's do it properly.
Yeah, So what you're saying is that really the ease of integrating data will propel a more use of geospatial, but at the same time, people's concern about privacy, which I'm also concerned. I don't want to be tracked from one place to another. It could become a stumbling block in the development of geospatial. Professor and Leslie, do you have any opinion? Do you agree with the statement? Is privacy really a concern? What about the data integration part of it? Or you have some other thoughts on what drives and what slows geospatial?
Maybe I can start first. Since I'm from university, I realized that the most important thing for the future is human resources. At least based on my experience, when you have a good human resources, geospatial human resources, then they will work with the government, with the private, and with the NGOs and everything. If you have a good human resources, then the other thing is become easier. Data sharing, communication, and everything. That's what I realize it. So there's I try to urge people, at least in Indonesia, whatever, we have huge potential of geospatial market. But if there is no human resources that take it, what happens? Yeah, you can buy technology, software very easily, but you cannot buy human resources. Yes, you can import human resources from other countries, but it creates social problems inside the countries. And stoppers maybe, data sharing, I think, maybe due to privacy or maybe due to bureaucratic ego or the silo of the governments. It's very, data sharing is easy to to talk about, but in realization, I don't know, in Singapore, or in United States, but data sharing, I think this is a big problem, in my humble opinion. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Professor Hassan. Yeah, I think capacity building, in building the skill set of the people in various aspects is key and crucial to the geospatial development. And of course, I think you are really well placed because you are a professor in the university. And perhaps with this kind of virtual learning, you could in a way teach more than 1,000 people at any point in time. So I think that's really something that we hope that you will be able to help in capacity building. Leslie, what do you think? What do you think about the points made by Nadine?
Yeah, I think data interoperability and data integration is definitely a very important catalyst for collaboration to happen. I also think expertise, like Professor Hassan shared, enough critical mass of expertise will really help the community and different people solve more problems. I'd like to contribute another perspective to that. I think one of the biggest blockers is mindset. In two ways. I think one is we mustn't forget, I think we can use technology to solve all sorts of challenges. If you ask the engineer, the guy with the technical expertise, give him enough time, he's going to be able to find a solution. Nadine's got a technical background, so there's nothing that the technical solution can't solve. But it takes will for people to work together. Let's try to be remember that if we are trying to ask for data from somebody else, we've got to put ourselves in their shoes and say that, okay, if I'm that person, I contribute my data, what's he or she going to do with it? My colleague in Esri, Jeff Peters, likes to say, collaboration happens at the speed of trust. It is not so much that sometimes people don't want to share data, but they're concerned that if I give you something and it's not 100% clean, I might make things more troublesome or disruptive for you. So, but if I trust you and know that you're going to use the data I share with you in context, then I know I'm not going to do you too much unintended harm, right? So sometimes there are these underlying reasons, so that's one kind of a way to apply a kind of collaborative mindset. The other one I think is we have more and more, technologies emerging, right? 5G coming around the corner at some point in time, and so on and so forth. But let's not forget that the professional is a cornerstone of the geospatial community, and these professionals take more than just a 3-minute video to pick up and build their expertise. So like Professor Hassan, who in the university is trying to grow and groom a new, generation after generation of spatial thinkers. We've also got to nurture, I believe, these geospatial professionals, not accidentally abdicate things to devices and technology. So I like to offer, mindset being applied in these two areas.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I think the key of the progress, human progress, is I think it's quite universal in the sense that sharing, yeah, sharing of knowledge. We start with sharing of food, sharing of knowledge, sharing of skill. That really, in a way, bring forward many things, not just geospatial. And just to use the description like Professor Hassan just now, you know, data is abundance. Data, in a way, is infinite. It can be used over and over again, and it is not something that is perishable. So data, I would think, should then be used greatly and shared among many people in a way to grow the pie of the industry, of the, you know, the use of it. But back to data, I mean, one thread I can find from the three of you is really about the integration of data. So it sounds like, okay, well, I think in fact, not just limited to geospatial, but in other areas as well, like data science. So without data, you know, there will be no geospatial. Without data, there will be no data scientist or data engineer. But at the same time, we learn about this mindset of not sharing and then protecting the privacy. And we have seen in Europe and US and certainly part of Asia, the real concern and the pushback from governments wanting in a way to make use of location data for prevention, the spread of COVID-19. So that will really, like what Nadine said, you know, could be a showstopper. So then, what do you see as ways that whether the government agency like us or academics or international organization could help in a way to address this privacy concern through policy or technological solution? Well, sorry, it's a long question, but I think you get the gist. How do we address this privacy concern? Anyone like to pick it up?
This is a very difficult question. So I will just, I mean, I agree with you. I think everybody is like hinting at this. Data sharing and integration is the biggest catalyst and the biggest showstopper at the same time because of many reasons. But for the privacy, I would just urge us all, you know, not to hide behind privacy, because what you hear is people use it as an excuse. It's not really it, right? It's because it's back to the human behavior, the mindset. I like that word. I tell you from our perspective, for example, what has been suggested to us, you know, Leslie is right. I'm a technical person, technical background. When we do, when we have these ideas, these innovation initiatives, for example, you know, within OGC, we usually run with the innovation and the great ideas, and there's that jump to operations that, you know, maybe somebody else would do, and that's not easy at all. So what we've been hearing is perhaps as part of when you start, you know, the innovation process, you actually think about that privacy. So if I'm building a smart cities project, you don't say, oh, sure, I get air quality from here, I'll get your temperature from there, la, 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 and I can, you know, voila, I can give you the answer. And then later on, the privacy is somebody else's problem. But actually to think about it alongside the technology, alongside the people aspect, alongside the operations. So this is one perspective.
Professor Hassan, Leslie?
Yeah, in my case, this is based on my experience about data sharing. I like what Yong mentioned. That's what I use. I mean, in order to get the data sharing environment going on, we give it first. So when I was in BIG, I tried to open many data, geospatial data that previously is very difficult to get. Then I open it, of course, through regulation, yeah, because we have bureaucracy works with regulation. So what I did first is just to set up regulation, yeah. Then when we open geospatial data, then the others data also is much easier to get, yeah. I don't know, I got the feedback here, yeah. But that's my point, Yong. If you want to have a good data sharing environment, give it first, yeah. And then, as Leslie said, you have to understand what is their need, what is their concern, and everything, yeah. But regarding the human resources to my student, I always said, as Nadine mentioned about geoethics, that's very important actually. I said to them, to the students, geospatial data is very powerful, but in the hand of the bad people, this geospatial information can be disastrous, yeah? Can go to corruption, bribery, and so on and so forth. So you have to be competent, professional, as Let's mentioned, but you have to have a good integrity, yeah? Geoethics. I think Nadine, I like that word, yeah? I will use that term maybe in my class also, geoethics, yeah? Thank you. Give it first, Yong, and then you will get more, yeah? Thank you.
Can I comment very quickly on that? Because the geoethics, you're right, you might want to point your students to an initiative by AGS called Ethical Geo. Because especially these days, they're doing like the impacts of contact tracing and how some governments may be using contact tracing as an excuse to target certain, groups, minority groups, or, so ethical geo. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nadine. Yeah, ethical geo.
Well, it sounds like, we're moving from data integration to skill set, and we're really thinking about the increasing concern on privacy, will really stop the progress. And one perhaps is a solution is to really emphasize on the ethics. But I don't know whether the stakeholders will really trust, even if we can in a way sort of bring in the ethical principles into the practice of the geospatial professionals. Well, I really hope that will happen. Leslie, perhaps we hear your views before we move on to the some questions from the audience. There are already about 17 questions there. So let's hear from you before we move on to our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Yong. If we wait for people to develop morals and ethics, it will wait a long time. So I like what Nadine and Prof. Hassan shared. Nadine said, design for privacy in mind. I think if more practitioners and professionals use that principle, there's a very practical step. We can start somewhere. You can start somewhere. Prof. Hassan said, take the first step. Trust must be earned. So Prof. Hassan is showing an example that take the first step. And in addition, also sometimes, when we need data for studies and decision making, oftentimes we're not looking just at the patterns and habits of one person. We're more interested in patterns. So data masking techniques, there are a lot of data masking techniques that are available and possible today. So another practical step is, if we find ourselves in a position of wanting to request for some data, I guess, just be specific. Don't ask for too much. Start somewhere, because with some data is better than no data at all. Anyway, we don't need too much data, right? So just be specific. Yeah, there is I've often seen users request for data, and when they share back their work to the original colleague who shared with them their data, it gets it's a virtuous cycle, because I share back with you what you helped me to do. You know, and that's how working relationships and lasting relationships, professional relationships bond and grow. You know. So there are many practical steps you can do without having to wait for morals, although it is important. Where there are good morals, good. Otherwise, there are still some practical steps we can take.
Thank you. Thanks, Leslie. I wanted to ask 3 questions, but I think due to time constraint, we have to move on to address the question from the audience. But all said, I think the impression I gathered from the 3 of you about the future of geospatial is really about, revolves around data, this interoperability that you got to do, the standards, the ethical use of the data. And I think what really in a way influenced the progress of geospatial, and for the matter, everything is about, the mindset of sharing, the mindset of growing the pie. But that really goes into the human nature, which I think, is a big question for us to address. Right now, we actually already opened the floor for audience to ask questions. And audience, please kind of put in your question in the Q&A rather than the chat. Pardon me, I may not be able to manage 2 windows at the same time. From the Q&A here, if the panelists would like to address them online, please go ahead. Or if you like to answer live, you can do so. What I'll do is that I'll pick up some of the questions that were raised in the beginning and are connected with our topic. So audience, pardon me, not all your questions will be answered. Nonetheless, you can get in touch with our organizer later, and we'll be happy to help you connect with our panelists so that you can have an ongoing discussion over email or other means. I think one question is really on related to what we talk about is collaboration and the standardization of data, not just the geospatial data. Because if we talk about interoperability and data integration, one thing is really about the standards, not necessarily the standardization. And so there's this question of what are some challenges facing sort of encouraging collaboration and standardization of geospatial data, and then and what could be the proposal or solutions. So I guess this question will be, I don't know, best answered by Nadine. Nadine, you have some thoughts on that? Since you Open Geospatial Consortium, you already drive open standards and sort of adoption of common standards.
Yes, and I was actually, maybe I'll answer 2 in 1. I was answering also the other question about there are a lot of standards from W3C, OGC, Esri, Google, and how do we make sure we're collaborating. So I think that's why I love geospatial, because the people who think geospatial are actually, I find them more collaborative in nature. I don't know what about it. We're like open-minded, goes back to the mindset. And with that, from the collaboration perspective, you see Esri sitting next to Google, next to Microsoft, next to Apple, next to Hexagon, within OGC, for example, trying to work on, the interoperability and the standards. And as OGC, we're working very closely with the W3C on the spatial web. So the spatial people are very good connectors. Not just the technology, actually the people and the technology comes. So I think what I have seen in terms of challenges faced in encouraging collaboration and standardization is I think the urgency. And I think this is why COVID, for example, or disasters usually are just like horrible circumstances, but sometimes good comes out of them, because then the urgency is there. Then the urgency is to, save lives. And then you go back and you figure out, the systems and the data. And I think we need to be a little bit more, anticipate, some of the issues and work together? It's another very difficult question, but I would say it's opening people's eyes on the value. I find myself repeating myself. I think Leslie will be in the same boat, repeating the value of what geospatial can bring to you, even by showing examples and even by showing how it's, has done so much impact. We need to cross that chasm, so to speak. So it's a winded answer, but I don't know if that helps. It's not easy. Please, some easy questions.
Oh, there are a lot of easy questions in the Q&A. You can pick them, I'll answer. But this issue of data interoperability, the adoption of common standards, I think we all know that businesses will have their own proprietary concern, and in a way, how do we bring them on board? So Leslie, since you are in a way from the business leadership side and industry side, would you like to offer your thoughts and some some ways forward?
My thoughts on how to encourage interoperability.
Yeah. The software A and software B, solution A, solution D, in a way, if the standards are not in a way adopted commonly, then we'll have a problems from one user switching from one solution to another. Of course, we bear in mind there's certainly commercial interest, but to work on enlarging the pie, right? To make the life of the user easier. How do we get that? I'm talking about telco. Now it's very easy for us to switch from one telco to another, but it's not so easy to switch from one solution provider to another. So what do you think? Sorry, I hope my question is not too sharp.
Yeah, I think every organization would have evolved on its unique journey. So they will find themselves with different kinds of enterprise applications. The data will reside in different containers. Sometimes some are interconnected, some are not. And transitioning is always a tricky question. There are trade-offs to be made. If I were to make this transition, I have to ask myself, it's a valid question. Will I get more value from it? So it's good old back to drawing board to say, what do I want to achieve from this if I want to switch out a system? So it is up to us to, if we're a service provider, to work with our user to understand what is the increased value add and the gains they can get. Then whatever switching risks and investments they make, we can put it into the equation and see if there's a good positive cost-benefit analysis. Two, they will always be confronted with, and it's a worthwhile step, be confronted with the decision, which legacy data must I retain? They have spent time in gathering that. The good news is, if it's in a container in the system, it is salvageable. Well, I don't want to use the word salvageable, is a bit of a defensive word, but it is migratable. And they've accumulated that over the years, and it's their unique proprietary resource, their competitive advantage. So we want to help them re-enliven or reactivate that as an asset. Right? So these trade-off questions need to be asked. Once it's in a container, it's quite easy to reactivate. And there are many technologies that can convert different kinds of data to different kinds of destination data these days. So compared to 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there are a lot more options, and it's more costly, more cost-effective in time and in dollar terms these days. So yeah, there are a lot of tools we have.
All right.
So I think what I'm hearing, maybe Leslie is articulating it very nicely. The way we encourage collaboration is showing the value through specific questions. So it's about the value. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess it's just like languages. there are so many languages in the world. So you will never find common standards in the languages because they have been there for so long. Each has its own cultural heritage and cultural interest. I think what is more important is, you know, the mindset of people, not just the academics, but also the business world, to see how, in a way, there could be some form of synergy or linkages that will, in a way, hopefully grow the pie larger in the future, right? Going to, since we are talking about the future of geospatial, all right? Now, turning to Professor Hassan, there's a question here specifically about Indonesia, right? I think this is a topic. And I think Leslie can also chip in because you cover the South Asia. The question is, there are so many streams of assimilating and advancing geospatial technology in Indonesia. So which one is the most critical and most urgent to solve?
Yeah, thank you, Xiao. I think the most urgent thing in Indonesia is, from geospatial perspective, is to establish the large-scale base maps of Indonesia. But thanks God that maybe starting next year, we will systematically, the government maps the whole Indonesia outside the forest for 1 to 5,000 base map, 3D, 8 layers, and for 10 metropolitan cities, we will have 1 to 1,000. This is the backbone, because when we talk about this all technology 4.0, the base map is very important. And as Leslie mentioned, that now people also thinking about indoor, beam, underground, even marine, yeah, because we have many uncharted sea areas of Indonesia. So the first thing is, what is very important in Indonesia is the base map, the large scale base map. In the cities is 1 to 1,000. The government has already agreed. The budget is okay. So when I leave BIG, I feel a little bit relief also, yeah, because next year then we'll start. So that's, I think, the most important thing. The other technology and everything, I think we have Esri, we have everything, yeah. We cannot do everything, I mean, in the government, yeah. That's what the most important thing. The second important thing is participatory mapping. Because we believe that without people, government cannot do their works effectively. So that's the reason when I said human resources is people to participate as much as possible, yeah? Participatory mapping. That's the two, I don't think about technology. I just think about soft technology, you know, yeah? What is important. So again, I believe for me, human resources is very important. We can have a very advanced technology in the future, but if the human cannot follow the culture of this advancement of technology, then we are in a big problem, yeah? So that's the reason I like to go to university and try to groom this generation. Because maybe my student later on will become leaders, or maybe in the industry, or maybe harmonized already in their study, then will be very good for the country. So we have to think not just hard things, but soft thing. We have to concern. Soft thing is more important, I believe, than the hard things. Yeah. Thank you, Xiao Yong. Maybe it's too philosophical. Yeah. It's not. I don't know. But thank you.
Well, well, we are hearing the words of wisdom. But can I also, in a way, pick up a questions from the audience that is related to Indonesia, since it's quite a rare opportunity to hear you in person here. This question is from Ilran. He thank you for outlining what might drive and slow and the geospatial adoption in Indonesia. So he is asking you, or he or she is asking you, from your perspective, has there been actually a concrete legal framework or guideline in terms of data sharing, and specifically the one map policy? Is it enough, adequate to provide security for entities who are sharing the data? We got two issues here. I'll just kind of focus on this issue first.
Actually regulation is there. For example, for one map policy, we have a presidential decree already since 2016, and one data Indonesia, the other presidential decree. So regulation base is okay, but the nitty-gritty in the field is sometimes not as easy as regulation said. For example, one map policy, this is at the moment including 85 thematic maps, but this year, next year, we will increase to 200 thematic maps. But the problem is many of these thematic maps are contain confidential contents, according to government. So many people, maybe from OGC communities also in Indonesia, they are urging government to open the data. So this is come back again to the issue about the data sharing, data openness, privacy from the government perspective. So if the question is it solving the whole problem? Of course not. The real life is always not as good as idealita. One Data Indonesia also, as Leslie and also Nadine has mentioned, now we try to start first with integrating geospatial and statistic, because to integrate with other data need time. So we start first geospatial and statistic for SDGs, and then for COVID-19 mitigation. And then later on, maybe adding demography, adding finance, adding other data. So you have to go step by step, as Leslie mentioned, we have to have a strong system, regulation, human resources, and everything. Do not go too fast, go cautiously, and to consider the whole thing, because this is about the whole country, and of course the whole world, Thank you.
Thanks. We probably have another 5 minutes to go before we end today's session. In fact, we're running about 15 minutes behind time, and we're also mindful that Nadine is in a completely different time zone, 12 hours behind us, and so audience, pardon us that we have to close the session today in about 5 minutes time. But before that, Leslie, would you like to supplement Professor Hassan's thoughts on Indonesia?
Yeah, thank you. Well, from my angle, what I have observed over these many years in Indonesia is I'm optimistic about the young generation, because I've observed people like my colleagues, they have tapped on a lot of online learning resources and done a self-directed learning, augmenting structured learning, but they've also taken action and they're so hungry to learn. So they tap on online learning resources and really expedited their own skills development. I've seen how my young colleagues in Esri Indonesia have grown over the years. It makes me optimistic there. I mentioned that because I saw a question asking about what AI and machine learning techniques are available. So I'll just encourage your audience. OGC has got a host of resources. Esri has got its own host of resources and online resources. So they are there, and take the first step. Let's not, even if we have a lot of data, sometimes I'm guilty of that too from time to time. I expect the data to do the analysis for me, but actually, data is just a start. I still have to frame the study. I still have to work hard and expend mental energies to perform the analysis of the data. You know, the data doesn't automatically do analysis for us. Yeah? So we, you know, just take the first step.
Thank you. Okay, perhaps I will, in a way, pick one last question from among the audience, which is connected to the future of geospatial. Somehow I may be losing the question from the boxes, but I do remember one audience is asking about the new frontiers of geospatial, which of course connects to the future. And he is asking more on terms of the underground mapping, underground geospatial. Well, it got to do with the data. And this is, in fact, a brand new ball game for us because there are a lot of data below the Earth's surface, underground, that we don't see. So what do you see this as a new frontier for geospatial to carry on? And how shall we then leverage on this opportunity? And what do you think, maybe among the audience here, they are businesses or they are students. So what kind of advice can you give them to sort of tackle the new frontier of geospatial? We'll start from Nadine first, and then followed by Professor, and lastly by Leslie.
So I think I answered at least partly the underground question, because it's to me, it's I think it's fascinating, and it goes back to, you know, the geospatial and where we can have the impact, because, you know, I was attracted by the drones and the autonomous cars and the small sats, but actually we have problems here on Earth and underground. And that's the same geospatial, right? So we really go from underground to space. And with the underground, it goes back to the value. It's like, it's a problem that's now finally we can help solve, right? I like the term assistive, where we can assist in solving that problem because we have the tools. And from our end, we're trying to connect those underground resources via, again, standards. So, you know, the different entities can actually figure out where, you know, their utilities are, or their, you know, pipes and so on. So that's definitely, you know, one of the frontiers. But if I had a closing thought, it's the power of geospatial. And I would say, I like what Leslie said, the data is not going to solve my problem. And we've heard it recently, even in the new space. We get excited about the technology, but let's spend a little bit of time understanding the problem and answering the question, and then we can line everything up very nicely. And that involves the technology, the standards, the innovation, and the partnership. It becomes the whole, you know, that's the solution. So I hope that answers it a little bit.
Yeah. Professor Hassan, could you please give us a quick view on the new frontiers of geospatial?
Actually, underground surveying is quite old. Yeah, during my study, when I was a student, when we do underground surveying, we use usually a gyro compass for direction, and then we use theodolite and for traversing and everything. But nowadays, I believe with we have real-time precise point positioning. You can put it on the, I don't know, in the opening of the underground. And then you have 3D laser scanning now, high density surveying. And you can fly also the drone with the LiDAR inside the shaft or whatever underground. So actually the methodology is old. Yeah, not new for the surveyors, but now it become more potential, like Nadine said, because we have so many technology. Yeah, high density surveying, we can convert it to mobile high density surveying. Yeah, fly in using drone, UAV, or whatever. So I'm quite optimistic. Yeah, indoor positioning technology also becoming very advanced now. Yeah. So, but we need standard also from Nadine. Yeah, I hope the standard is already there, Nadine. Yeah, I don't know for indoor,
Yong
underground. Yeah.
is gonna help us advance it. It's there's momentum behind it because now there are these studies about the billions of dollars getting lost when the digging happens on top of resources that were not mapped. So there's definitely momentum. There's a working group. There's a draft standard being worked on, and we just need to push it forward. The problem is you can have the best standard in the world, but that still means the people, the organizations have to share their data. And that's one of the obstacles still, 2020 for underground.
Yep. Leslie,
Okay.
can we hear a final point from you?
Yeah, there's so many areas of change happening. I'm struggling to choose one area.
Yeah.
But I will just pick one. And I think what Esri is going to focus on is the better and faster management of 3D volume data, 3D space data. It will apply indoors and above ground structures. It will apply underground spaces and structures. And with that, enable the professionals, the thinkers to be able to make the most use of the 3D volume space that they have. There will be some product release mentioned in the next few months from Esri about that kind of data type. But it's not done overnight. It's not something done overnight. Because it has to be something that's more easily accessible by the broader community. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you to our distinguished, thanks to all our distinguished speakers here today for joining us at the panel discussion on the topic of the future of geospatial. When we set this topic, we know that it's not an easy topic, and the topic is so large that it can cover so many aspects. Nonetheless, since we're in 2020 and we are moving towards the future, we thought this might be a topic that we can attempt. But I think our decision was right and it's also wrong. Right in the sense that we kind of, through this panel discussion, spark off a lot of thoughts on the future of geospatial. Wrong in the sense that I think with this online discussion, with just a limit of 40 minutes, we can never finish discussing all the possibilities about the future of geospatial. I think what we would like to see is a continuous discussion in various forums on the future of geospatial. What I hear from the three speakers today is really about, number one, data integration, and geospatial is really something that we can glue things together. But in order to do that, I think we must have a good mindset, not just us, the practitioners, but also the user in terms of sharing so that the pie can be grown larger. So these are the two key messages that I got today. And I think to end this conversation before I hand it over to my colleague, I would just like to share here with the audience that I think many of us are already in the geospatial industry in the field. We are already the converts. We already have the passion for geospatial. And we must not, in a way, live in an ivory tower. We must not live in the silos, even as geospatial has many disciplines that come from different sort of academic background and training. We should, in a way, take the larger perspective to look at geospatial as a growing industry. In fact, research has shown that in Asia Pac, we'll be seeing more than 15% of CAGR by 2028. So let's not be sort of selfish. Let's build our future together. I think that is really the true spirit about geospatial that in a way underpins a few technology that we see emerging today. So thank you very much, and our apology to some of the audience that we are not able to answer all your questions, you're most welcome in a way to contact the organizer. And with the permission of our speakers, we will link them up with you and you can continue this meaningful conversation. And the slide they use, with the permission, we will also post them at the GeoWorks website for you to download later. Thank you very much. And over to you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siau Yong. Thank you, distinguished speakers, for helping us to understand a little bit more about the future of geospatial. Well, we have now come to the end of today's program and we hope you have found it interesting. It is, of course, just a start. If you want to know more about our program in the days ahead, please visit geoworks.sg or use the QR code to register for upcoming events. We are actually currently holding an industry panel on mobility and logistics in a separate room, and the speakers for this panel session will be with AI Robotics, Grab, Ericsson, Mapbox, and UNL. So do log into that webinar using the link provided in the chat box or via your email that you may have already received. In the meantime, we wish you all of you have a great week ahead. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.